I never thought I'd be one of those guys you read about online. You know the ones. The clueless husband who ends up blindsided, looking like a complete fool. I thought my marriage was different. I thought Marla and I were solid. But as it turns out, I had no idea what was really happening behind the scenes. Let me back up. My name is Martin, I'm 35, and until a few days ago, I was happily married, or at least I thought I was. Marla and I were about to celebrate our 4th wedding anniversary. I wouldn't call myself a romantic by any stretch of the imagination, but this year, I wanted to do something special. The last 4 months had been tense, to say the least. Marla had been acting distant, and not in a work-stress kind of way. She was always buried in her phone, constantly texting or scrolling through something she never talked about. She'd been working late more often, and when she did come home, it felt like her mind was somewhere else. I tried to talk to her, but she brushed me off with a "yeah, I'm just tired or I have a lot on my plate right now." At first, I didn't want to read too much into it. Every marriage goes through rough patches, right? I figured maybe we'd grown apart a little and just needed to reconnect. That's why I decided to plan something big for our anniversary. A week-long trip to Hawaii, back to where we spent our honeymoon. I wanted it to be a complete surprise. I booked a beautiful resort, arranged a romantic candlelit dinner, spa appointments, wine tastings. All the things Marla loved. I even coordinated with her boss to make sure she could take the week off without her knowing. I thought this would be the thing to bring us back together. When I called her boss, everything was going smoothly, at first. I explained my plan and asked if she could give Marla the time off without saying anything to her. But then her boss paused and said something that made my stomach churn. "Another week?" That stopped me in my tracks. "What do you mean, another week?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "She just requested a 4-day weekend," her boss replied. "It overlaps with your anniversary, actually. She mentioned taking some personal time. I figured you knew." I froze. Marla hadn't mentioned anything to me about taking time off, let alone around our anniversary. "Oh, right," I said quickly, trying to mask my confusion. Must have slipped her mind. Her boss chuckled. "Let's just say she's been working hard lately. She deserves the time off. I'll approve it, but I'll keep quiet about the extra week you mentioned." I hung up, my mind racing. At first, I thought maybe Marla was planning something for us. Maybe she wanted to surprise me, too. But something about it didn't sit right. The next day, my unease grew into suspicion. Marla had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, and a notification popped up on the screen. Booking confirmation. I didn't mean to snoop, but my curiosity got the better of me. I clicked the notification, and my heart sank. It was a confirmation for a beach house rental, for the same weekend as our anniversary. But it wasn't in Hawaii. It was in a completely different city. I scrolled through her email and found more. Plane tickets for 2, leaving the day before our anniversary. A new swimsuit, lingerie, and a dress I'd never seen before, all ordered online and tucked away in her suitcase. At first, I tried to tell myself this was still part of some surprise plan for us. But the receipts, the location, none of it made sense. Why wouldn't she tell me? Why a different city? That's when I started to suspect the worst. The final straw came later that night. Marla was asleep, her phone sitting on the nightstand. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I unlocked her phone. I knew her passcode. She never bothered to change it. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her messages, half hoping I'd find nothing. But what I found confirmed everything I'd feared. In a chat with one of her friends, they were discussing the trip. "I don't believe you and lover's name are finally flying together. Have you figured out how to twist everything yet? I'll say we're spending 2 days in Hawaii. You know, anniversary stuff. The rest? Well, that's for me and him." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. There it was, in black and white. She was planning to spend our anniversary with someone else, her lover. In that moment, everything fell apart. I thought about the last 4 months, the distance, the late nights, the constant texting. I tried to blame myself, thinking maybe I wasn't doing enough as a husband. But now I realized it had nothing to do with me. Marla had been living a double life, using our marriage as a cover for whatever fantasy she'd built with this other guy. And the worst part? She didn't even have the decency to end things before betraying me. I put her phone back on the nightstand and sat in the living room, staring at the wall. I'd planned a whole week of love and romance, thinking it would bring us closer, and she'd been planning the exact opposite. What do you even do in a situation like that? I didn't sleep that night. After reading Marla's texts and seeing her plans laid out so clearly, I left the bedroom and headed to the kitchen. I sat at the table, staring at nothing, my mind racing as I tried to process what I'd just discovered. This wasn't something I could ignore or even fix. It wasn't one fight or a misunderstanding. This was a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that there was no coming back from it. Marla was planning to spend our anniversary with another man. She was lying to my face, using our marriage as a cover for her affair. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger boiling inside me. I had to think clearly. This was the end of our relationship, no question about it. But if it was going to end, I needed to make sure it ended on my terms. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. At 3 a.m., I dialed Eric, a guy I'd known for years and trusted to handle this kind of mess. He answered groggily, but woke up quickly when I explained the situation. "Martin, this is bad," Eric said, cutting straight to the point. "But it's not hopeless. If she's cheating and you have proof, you're in a strong position for the divorce. You just have to be smart about this." I told him everything about the texts, the plane tickets, the fake anniversary trip. He listened patiently before laying out what I needed to do. "First, you need to gather as much evidence as possible," Eric said. "Screenshots, emails, receipts, anything that shows her behavior and spending patterns. It'll help establish her negligence and infidelity. Second, find out who this guy is. If you can prove she's been using marital resources for this affair, it'll strengthen your case." Eric paused, then added, "And Martin, don't confront her yet. Wait until you have everything you need. Timing is everything." I thanked him and hung up, feeling slightly more focused. If this was going to happen, I wasn't going to let Marla twist the narrative or play the victim. I was going to expose her for what she was. As I sat in the dark kitchen, the anger and betrayal slowly gave way to something else, a burning need for revenge. I wasn't just going to divorce Marla. I wanted her to feel the humiliation she'd put me through. I wanted her lies and deceit laid bare for everyone to see, especially the people she cared about impressing. I started coming up with a plan, consulting Eric periodically as I worked through the details. My goal was simple: confront her at the most inopportune moment when she least expected it. I'd catch her off guard and make sure there was no way she could talk her way out of it. After hours of brainstorming, I came to a decision. I'd wait until the very last day of the trip she thought she'd planned so perfectly. That's when I'd expose her. In the morning, I called Marla's boss, Mr. Hargrove. He'd already approved her week off for the anniversary, but I needed his help to make sure everything stayed under wraps. "Mr. Hargrove, I need a favor," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I have to tell you something personal about Marla, and I need you to keep it confidential." He listened as I explained the situation. I could hear the surprise in his voice as he processed what I was saying, but to his credit, he stayed professional. "Martin, I'm sorry you're going through this," he said after I finished. "I'll do what I can to help. What do you need from me?" "I need you to act like everything is normal," I said. "Don't tell her you know anything, and don't let on that her weekend schedule might change. I need her to think she's in control." Mr. Hargrove agreed, and I felt a small wave of relief. Having him on my side meant Marla wouldn't suspect a thing. Over the next few days, I threw myself into preparing for what was to come. I started gathering evidence, just as Eric had instructed. I took screenshots of her texts and emails, saved copies of the receipts from her account, and documented every suspicious detail I could find. I even went back through our shared calendar and tracked the nights she'd worked late to see if they lined up with any of her other plans. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. Marla hadn't just betrayed me. She lied to my face over and over again, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. But I didn't let the anger consume me. I stayed focused, knowing that every piece of evidence I collected was another step toward reclaiming control of the situation. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal around Marla. She acted like nothing was wrong, smiling and chatting with me as if she wasn't planning to leave for a romantic getaway with another man. I played along, keeping my tone light and casual, even though every moment with her felt like a knife in my chest. At one point, she even asked, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just work stuff," I said. "You know how it is." She nodded, clearly uninterested, and went back to her phone. If she noticed anything off about my behavior, she didn't say so. She was too busy planning her escape to realize I was planning mine. By the end of the week, everything was in place. I had the evidence I needed, the support of her boss, and a plan that would leave Marla with no way to wriggle out of what she'd done. All I had to do now was wait for the right moment to execute it. The irony wasn't lost on me as I watched Marla float around the house, humming to herself and smiling like nothing was wrong. She was so confident, so secure in her little scheme. She didn't even notice how carefully I was studying her every move. She had no idea that the clock was ticking down to the moment when her lies would finally catch up with her. As expected, a couple of days before our anniversary, Marla came to me with her big idea. "Martin," she said sweetly, leaning against the kitchen counter while I pretended to read something on my phone. "So, I was thinking, what if we celebrated our anniversary a little differently this year?" I looked up at her, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, what do you mean?" "Well, you know how things have been kind of tense lately," she said, her tone carefully measured. "I thought maybe we could take a trip to Hawaii and stay with Amy for a few days. She's been dying to see us, and it could be a nice way to relax without spending too much money on hotels." Amy was one of her old friends from college, a convenient cover for whatever she had planned with her lover. The audacity of her suggestion made my stomach churn, but I kept my expression neutral. "That sounds like a great idea," I said with a smile, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. Her face lit up, and she came around the counter to kiss me on the cheek. "I'm so glad you're on board. I'll take care of all the details. You don't have to worry about a thing." I nodded, fighting back the urge to say something that would tip her off. Let her think she was in control. Half of my plan was already falling into place. For the next few days, Marla and I played the roles of a happy couple preparing for a romantic getaway. She was careful to keep up the act, laughing at my jokes and even cuddling up to me at night like she used to. I won't lie, there were moments when her performance got under my skin. She was so convincing, so adept at creating the illusion of innocence, that I started questioning myself. Could I really have misread her intentions? Was there a chance she wasn't the scheming liar I believed her to be? But then I'd think about the texts, the plane tickets, the receipts. The truth was inescapable. Marla wasn't just lying to me. She was using me as a prop in her elaborate charade. And every time she smiled at me, it only made my resolve stronger. The last day of the trip was when everything came to a head. We'd spent the week doing all the things Marla had planned, lounging on the beach, sipping cocktails, and even meeting up with Amy for dinner once. Marla seemed perfectly content, confident that her plan was working flawlessly. That morning, as we sat on the balcony overlooking the ocean, I decided it was time to end the charade. "Marla," I said, setting my coffee cup down and turning to face her, "we need to talk." She looked up from her phone, her expression curious but unconcerned. "What's up?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder of documents Eric had prepared for me. I placed them on the table between us, watching as her smile faltered. "I know everything," I said calmly. Her eyes darted to the folder, then back to me. "Everything about what?" she asked, her voice suddenly defensive. "The texts, the tickets, the receipts," I said, my tone firm. "Your little plan to spend our anniversary with someone else while pretending to be here with me. It's all in there." Marla's face turned pale, but she quickly recovered, crossing her arms and leaning back in her chair. "You've been snooping through my stuff?" she demanded, her voice rising. "That's a violation of my privacy." "Privacy?" I shot back. "You mean the privacy you've been using to lie to me, to humiliate me? Don't try to twist this, Marla. You're caught." She opened her mouth to argue, but seemed to think better of it. Instead, she shifted tactics, her voice trembling as she tried to play the victim. "Martin, you don't understand," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've been feeling so trapped lately, so unappreciated. I didn't know how to talk to you about it, and things just happened." "Things didn't just happen," I said, cutting her off. "You made choices, Marla." You chose to betray me, to lie to me, to spend our anniversary with someone else. Don't insult me by pretending this wasn't deliberate. She stared at me. Her tears drying as anger replaced the act of vulnerability. You know what? She snapped. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing someone else. And you know why? Because you're stuck, Martin. You're moving through life so slowly, and I'm tired of waiting for you to catch up. I deserve better. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I refused to let her see it. You deserve better? I said quietly. Better than the man who's been working hard to build a life with you? Better than the man who planned this whole week to save our marriage? She didn't answer. I packed my things that afternoon and left Marla on the island. As I drove to the airport, my heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest, but I knew I'd made the right decision. The divorce process was grueling. It took nearly a month and a half to finalize everything, and Marla fought me every step of the way. She tried to position herself as the victim, claiming I'd been neglectful and controlling, but the evidence I'd gathered shut down her arguments at every turn. In the end, she got nothing. As for her lover, I found out later he was one of those wealthy types who used his money to charm women like Marla. Maybe he'd give her the life she thought she deserved, or maybe he'd move on to the next thrill. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Looking back, I realized that Marla's betrayal wasn't just about her infidelity. It was about her inability to see the value in what we had, to appreciate the life we'd built together. She saw me as a stepping stone, not a partner, and that's something I'll never let happen again. I'm still picking up the pieces of my life, trying to move forward with a broken heart and 10 years of memories that feel like a lie. But I'm not giving up. If there's one thing this experience has taught me, it's that I deserve better, too. And next time, I won't settle for anything less.